My name is Cheylon Woods. I am the outgoing president for the Louisiana Archives and Manuscripts Association, and I am the head and archivist of the Ernest J. Gaines Center. Background information. The Ernest J. Gaines Center is a international research center focused on the work of Dr. Ernest J. Gaines and the themes found in his work. So we talk about Tennessee, sharecropping, slavery, Black families, Black masculinity, Black femininity, Black matriarchy, Black patriarchy, civil rights, the industrialization of agricultural spaces, religion and social justice. I was trying to think of the right term. The industrialized prison system, because there's literally 2 books on it. And whatever else people kind of point out to us, and also like this writing process to a lesser extent, because I don't know much about that because I don't like writing. But we bring in lecturers from all over the country. We do public programs. Our first virtual public program is going to be on the 25th. We are interviewing Provost Farm, which is June and Angie Provost. They were featured in the 1619 project. And we do like a lot of outreach, a lot of library instruction, a lot of tours, and a lot of like research appointments. So life in the Gaines Center, COVID life in the Gaines Center, because it's not post-COVID, it's now. So I think the biggest change, so our work actually has not changed that much. Like last November, Ernest J. Gaines passed away. So things kind of shifted then. We started getting more requests for information, and more people are like writing articles about him. So we're getting those kind of calls, which was already happening. But we were already handling those kind of research requests in addition to the regular research requests. The hardest thing was like not being here over the summer, which in actuality we were here over the summer because we had to be. We are with only 2 staff members. Our collection is not digitized. Like we have I have a finding aid for the novels, and that's about it. Because when I started here, I'm still the only trained archivist. My library specialist, Jordan Richardson, he's learning how to process under me because he has to process with me. And he's been a great help. When I started, I didn't have any of that. So my first thought was, is there a finding aid? This doesn't make any sense. I can't make heads or tails out of it, start over again. And that's what I did. And I was like, well, if I have to start over again, where do I start? And I started with the most logical place, which were the novels, because in my mind, that's what people were gonna want. And every year I was like, and things will slow down and I'll process. Have not processed. I have not fully processed the collection since I started because we're not staffed. We do a lot of tours. We do a lot of classes. I do library instruction that is not Gaines related. I am the departmental librarian for English, history, philosophy, and geography. I am graduate faculty. I am on a number of campus-wide and national organization committees and leadership positions. And I present, last year I presented 8 times at national conferences. Yeah. Because, 10-year track. That's not fun. At some point, I would really like to have a conversation about, 10-year tracking archivists and, what that should reasonably look like. And publishing and work. So my job in the Gaines Center is being the archivist, but it's also being the director of International Research Center, being, kind of a quasi-professor, figuring out what that means, because I don't fully know what that means. And making sure everyone gets a certain, level of customer service from the center and rebuilding the reputation. So none of that changed. What changed is everyone else having to find a way to balance this new online world, and that causing a lot of lag. So all of a sudden, more than ever, things are getting to me last minute, which is causing a certain sense of anxiety over here as we're trying to scramble to get everything together to get it back out and back and forth. And also the figuring out correct platforms and stuff. I shared an event we're doing. I used Run the World. I did not use Zoom because one thing I've been hypersensitive about is Zoom bombing. My public programs deal with racial things. I am not going to be okay if I see the N-word flashing across the screen or in a chat or people start interrupting. And this way I can control that a little more. But that means I also spent a lot of time figuring out what we could afford because we don't have money. That was an alternative to Zoom. Not easy. That's not an easy task at all. In addition to like, how exactly are we going to digitize things? Where are those digitized things going to, feasibly live? How are people going to access it? Am I just only going to use Dropbox for the rest of my life? Or what's the next step going to look like? Having requests for like 3D objects, I don't have the ability. Awesome. I don't have an ability to I don't have the software to take appropriate pictures, and trying to figure out how to piece together quality images to turn into a 3D object for another university that wants to do a digital exhibition. All with I really should write an article on how to DIY this, because that's what we did all summer. Luckily, Jordan is a whiz at his iPhone X, and he's like, I know how to do this. And he's a young millennial or whatever, so he knows all about angles and lighting. I'm like, how do I hold the fabric? That's all you need me to do. Tell me where to stand so I'm not in your way. And figuring all those things out, but also understanding why we have to pivot. So this year made us reorganize our wish list of projects, which is why started working to get open access materials through the Game Center, because it's necessary. Starting to figure out how we're going to actually start recording our programs, because now we don't have a choice. We can't do face-to-face programs, when before we would do that and we didn't record them. And now we have to think harder about making sure we're recording it, where those recordings are going to live, how people are going to access them through multiple platforms, and also taking consideration the firewalls and things for the university to access information, and how exactly, if there isn't a workaround through the university, getting permission to create third-party sites essentially to house these things, so it's actually open access and easily accessible to everyone. That's kind of where our thought has shifted. We've only had one class so far, because the faculty is shifting to all online. We've had them request DVDs to use in their classes and stuff like that, but actually us teaching a tour or things like that, we haven't done, because everything's appointment only. And that's been the other thing, that people do not just jump in anymore. They used to just stop in, which, don't get me wrong, that was also distracting. It's just a whole nother level of distraction, because now it's inundated with emails that I don't want to read or answer, because I want to do the things I need to do, and I'm not engaging with the public as much as I was before. So that's the only biggest change. But as far as our processes, those have not actually changed, just because we were already thinking about these things before it started. We just had to do it quicker.
That's all for you, Shay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Can our next panel member please step forward?
I'll talk. This is Christina. So my name is Christina Bryant. I'm the director of the Louisiana Division City Archives and Special Collections at the New Orleans Public Library. And we are the municipal archives for the city of New Orleans, as well as holding a large special collection, photograph collection, maps, and we are the genealogy library basically for the city of New Orleans. So as far as what happened with us with COVID, we shut down completely to the public and staff on March 20th. Nobody was allowed in the building after that. We were completely shut down until May 18th, and we opened back up to staff only, and we started getting things rolling, and then we opened back up to the public in extremely limited capacity on July 6th. Luckily for the archives, we've been able to pretty much manage our opening as we would like. We haven't had to necessarily follow what the rest of the library system is doing, which is good for us, because we couldn't manage to be open in the same way that they are. But I was kind of laughing because Cheylon, my new word that I keep using is pivot. That's my new favorite word. And I think my staff is getting very tired of hearing that. But we have had to make a lot of changes in the way that we operate. Our department was very public facing. We were open 7 days a week, from 10 to 8, 4 of those days, and people could walk in. No appointment needed, no anything. They could just come up to our department and start getting help. So we have completely shifted that. We are no longer open to the public. We are only open by appointment, very limited appointments. We're only allowing appointments for original materials, nothing else, which means that we have greatly increased our research and reference services by mail or email. Email specifically, which we didn't do before. We did not do digital email reference and research. We had to request everything by mail. We mailed out paper copies to people. So we've been doing a lot of adjusting of our long held processes and procedures. And while what caused this was not the best thing, I'm actually kind of excited about it because it has forced us to accelerate the timeline on those things that were kind of in process. We were kind of looking at offering these services, starting to look at maybe limiting our hours and how much we're open to the public. And this has just accelerated that whole timeline, which has actually given us some, created less reason for us to have to justify what we wanted to do in the first place. And so I'm going to be interested to see in the long run how some of this backtracks and what we end up with as our operating model. And one of our big things that we've discovered is we're having to work really hard on education, both educating staff on new processes and procedures and educating patrons on new processes and procedures. And not just that, but since we were so open and people could just walk in and talk to us and ask questions, we're having to do a lot of education on our internet resources, on what's available digitally, while as part of being a public library, still looking at the equity factor of it. So we are doing a lot of phone reference as well, helping people in ways that who don't have the internet access right now. So, and a couple of the big projects we've worked on recently that are kind of in light of what has been going on with COVID is we actually did just start last Saturday was our first in a 6-week series of genealogy programming that we did. We're working with the Archdiocese archives in New Orleans and the Catholic cemeteries in New Orleans. And we did a Zoom program, which is the first time we've ever done a Zoom program. And we're doing 6 of them. And the first one was super successful. So we're interested to see how that goes forward. And hopefully that's something that we can continue to do. Even when we start to be able to open up to the public, I feel like it's going to be a good thing because people themselves, we might be open, but they might not want to come in. So, you know, because you have to look at patrons from both aspects. They, you know, you might be offering the services in person, but they might not be comfortable coming in. They might not be able to travel. People aren't going to be able to travel anymore. Both patrons and researchers are not going to get the funding that they might have previously gotten. So, yeah, we're just looking at doing a lot of digital that we haven't been doing previously as far as education and programming and putting content out there digitally. And one of the projects that we've kind of shifted on from that is I was very much interested in getting full collections up there digitally, putting full collections in Content DM, making sure everything was out there. And we're doing a little more of doing partial collections, teasers almost, just to kind of have people, give people an idea of what's available and give them prompts to come and ask more questions so that we can get access and content out there instead of having to push out full collections onto our website. So that's kind of where we are. Our other big state of the archives thing that we have going on right now that I'm sure lots of people are going to start facing is we're going to undergo a huge budget cut at the end of the year. So I know everybody's looking at that as well. So I know personally at some point that's to be something I'd be interested in talking about with people is how people are dealing with budget cuts and what we're doing to manage that. Because our system in general is going to have a budget cut. And then of course that will impact us as well. So we're kind of scrambling right now to see how we can both promote ourselves up until that point, and then see what we can leverage into the next year to make sure that we are not getting lost in the budget cuts. So, and that's pretty much it. That's kind of where we are. I mean, I know everybody's kind of in flux, and while it's not a great time, it is an interesting time to be seeing all these changes and doing different things. So
yeah, I'd say it's certainly interesting, especially because the number one, not headline necessarily, but the number one like undercurrent of everything is like, these are historic times. And as people who take care of historic items, I feel like we're all kind of sitting here like, yeah, what are we doing to save it? Like, but okay, all right, so that's, thank you, Christina. Nolan or Zach, do you want to fight over it?
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead, Nolan. Go alphabetical order by first name.
There you go. Hi, everyone. My name is Nolan Eller. I am one of the past presidents of LAMA before Shay. And I am also the University Archivist and Head of Special Collections and Records Management at Louisiana Tech. And kind of to piggyback off of what everybody else has kind of said, it's been a complete shift in the way that we're thinking about how we are handling our patron users and everything that we're doing within the department. We're actually getting a lot done. It's kind of refreshing because I'm able to really focus on more projects because of the pandemic, because we have seen a little bit of our research requests drop off. Our floor is closed to the general public. The library is open, but we are closed and we are on an appointment basis. And I have 2 high-risk staff members, so I don't allow patrons on the floor. If there is a patron utilizing our collections, that all is done on the main floor of the library. And I walk the materials down, I walk the materials up, and then they're quarantined and all of that process. We are in the process. So our finding aids system and our finding aids hadn't really had major updates for a long time. And so we are in the process of reformatting finding aids to a more standardized system, so they can be more easily input into a digital repository. And I found that that's really great work for our student workers. So we've been doing a lot of having our student workers do that remotely, using file sharing. A lot of and kind of what Christina talked about, it's about rewriting policies, but also rewriting instructions and going down in regards to like reformatting a finding aid, something that I think is relatively easy to understand. A student necessarily doesn't. And so you have to be very specific in examples and rewriting instruction manuals on that, rewriting instruction manuals on uploading materials to the LDL for materials that have previously been scanned, because a lot of that work can be also done remotely. And then on top of all of that, we had Laura. And while we didn't get hit as badly as Lake Charles and McNeese, we did have some water damage up on our floor. And so luckily I was prepared for that. I had moved all of the materials away from the windows and the walls. And none of the materials were damaged, but it's been a long process getting everything back. And on top of that, it's just kind of thrown everything into just everything that we had been working on. We had to completely pivot to another direction, and now we're trying to pivot back. On top of being pulled in a number of different directions because of Laura. But also, one thing that Laura has given us, it's given us the ears of the administration, because while my floor wasn't necessarily hit very badly, our third floor pretty much flooded, which also flooded the main floor of the library. So at least we've kind of got the administration's ear. And I know Mary Lynn and Dr. Laura McLemore presented last week at LHA on archival advocacy. And right now, even with our LoRa damage, we have a really good opportunity to possibly get something, even if they're just more aware of what we're dealing with and the challenges we're dealing with. I'm also, as the university's records officer, another big project, we finally, after 3 years, got all of our retention schedules approved by the state. That was a big weight off of our back. They are in the process of rewriting some policies, and we're going to be kind of a guinea pig for some of that, mainly in dealing with electronic records. We'll see how that goes. But that was a big project that we had been working on and wanted to get done. I've been doing a lot of just redoing a lot of my archival instruction, creating Zoom courses, connecting with professors, and on top of that, with the general library as a whole, because we've been without a library director for going on 2 years, and so there's been everybody kind of circle the wagons, and so we've been all kind of pitching in and getting pulled away from the archives and then getting pulled back, and so it's been an interesting period. As I said, it's been really eye-opening, and I think it's good because it's forced me at least to take another look at my collections, and another look at what I'm doing as the archivist to preserve and ensure that all of that material is being saved. One thing that I did do with the pandemic, I did start a COVID-19 archive, a digital archive for the students to upload material. One thing I should have done but didn't, there is a lot of material that has like music. We've got some students did videos and there's a lot of copyrighted music in the background, or they use music or things so it'll be a challenge to see what I can and cannot do with that material. I know that our Department of Communications wants to see that out, but it's not necessarily something that I can make readily available yet, but it is my goal to kind of make that more available and just increase our digital footprint on the avenues that we have available to us. So that's kind of a short run of what we're doing here at TAC.
Okay, thanks, Nolan. And Zach, I think that leaves you best for last.
Always. Hi, everybody. I'm Zachstein, the head of special collections at UL Lafayette. So I guess first, just a very, very brief introduction of our department. So the special collections contains the university archives, which of course documents the institutional records. We also have the Acadian and Manuscripts collection, which is a group of collections that have been donated to us that specifically relate to the Acadiana region. And we also have a Louisiana room that has all material, be it books, maps, vertical files, microfilm, that's all related to Louisiana in general. And of course, a rare books collection and digital archives as well. So as far as, so actually first, having done that, first want to just describe a little like what we were able to accomplish before actually coming back to the university. So just like all of us for many months, we had to work remotely. And of course, for archives, that is very, very difficult, especially for those who, for the majority of their duties, is processing collections. And that was the case with a couple of our staff, where pretty much all they did was processing. So doing remote work was a little difficult. And many, in many archives, they chose like not to take collections home with them for pretty obvious reasons, be it like the condition, like the climate conditions and stuff like that. So actually, we did actually take collections home during the pandemic, and even if it was a risk, it was still we felt this was the best way to continue with our work and to enhance our archives and also give us a chance to catch up with and decrease our backlog. And I think all in all, it did, I think it was a success. We were able to get quite a bit of collections processed, not just with Acadiana manuscripts, but also university archives as well. When we got back, obviously we brought everything back with us and quarantined everything. And then, yeah, and then with returning, it was kind of similar to what others were doing. And we're continuing this now. All patron visits are by appointment only. I created a web form that is available on our, not on the library homepage and also our special collections page. And it is required that anybody who wants to come visit, they have to fill out that form. And it includes the purpose of research, what particular collections they want to look at. And we give them a couple of choices for times and dates. Because we did make a restriction. We do have our reading room is open, but we're only at this time we're only allowing at a maximum of 5 patrons at a time, and that also includes that maximum 5 restriction also applies to student workers as well, because all of the special collections, and there's about I think 6 staff. We're all back, and so we also, and when we have student workers, like that could be like a lot of people. So in order to keep with social distancing, we're keeping student workers only a maximum of 5 can be working at a time. So far, that has not been an issue, and we've been able to coordinate schedules, and everybody has been able to properly social distance. When patrons come in, first we have the collection available for them before they come. So, because usually before that, a patron may just walk in and say, oh, I want to look at the Felix Voorhees collection. And we would have to like go in the back and bring it to them. Here, they tell us in advance through the appointment form. So we can bring it to them right away. And of course, all patrons are required to wear masks, and they're also required to wear gloves when they handle these materials. After the use, we put notes or tags on the collections, and be this collection or the books as well. They're kept on their own single carts and quarantined for a minimum of 72 hours. And at first, we kind of feared that this would be somewhat overwhelming, but I think so far it has been pretty successful. It's certainly been an adjustment, but we have been able to get into a nice groove with that. I know Christina had mentioned something about like researchers who need to come in remotely, and I know Sharon just posted a question about how we're dealing with like distance researchers and such. For the most part, we're doing the same thing as we were before. So they have to fill out a digitization request form, and that goes to our digitization archivist who fulfills it. One of the big differences is usually before COVID, we would charge like a digitization fee. We have waived that for the time being, because obviously because of the situation. So, and of course we still have the same restrictions, like we won't digitize entire collections, and as long as it's like a reasonable amount, we will fulfill that request. Of course, if anyone wants to publish something, publication fees would still apply. They would have to fill out permission to publish forms as well. As far as like instruction is concerned, that's also been a shift. I mean, so far I've had one class come in, and when I say come in, basically me giving basically a tour and a little instruction in the archives. But of course, it has to be done virtually. And the way we did that with this one class was because the university. So yeah, UL Lafayette has. I don't know if other universities have the same thing, but we use something called Microsoft Teams. So obviously it's a way for us to, one, use when we have a calendar to like schedule things. We also are able to chat with others within UL, be it it doesn't necessarily have to just be in the library. It's also other faculty as well. In addition, we can have face-to-face meetings. Or when I say face-to-face, I mean video meetings through Teams as well. That was the way we were able to have virtual meetings when we were on the lockdown. But we're continuing to do it here. Yeah, we're continuing to do it here, and we did it with this particular class as well. Yeah, Teams has been pretty helpful. I personally, I think it's easier to use than Zoom, but obviously there'll be detractors there. But definitely I think what else. We had, and actually, as far as coming back is concerned, actually back when we were working remotely, and this was the time when we were not able to actually go to the library. We did have certain patrons asking like, would they be able to like access this, or can someone give a digital file? And unfortunately, we would have to say no. And then there came a period still during the remote where we were able to go back into the library and actually complete some of those requests. And so now we're just kind of slowly building, like going back to those requests and trying to fulfill them. But I mean, I think for the most part, I think the archives is going back to business as usual. During the lockdown, we weren't able to bring in new collections. We've restarted that. One such collection that we just received, and this was actually something we were going to do before COVID had hit. It was the old town records of the town of Washington. So we just received that. And I'm also going to be speaking with the tourism office of the tourism office in Opelousas. They're thinking of donating oral histories, Opelousas oral histories to us. Besides that, there's been we've also had some projects. Me, our digitization archivist, and a professor have partnered on a grant to it's a big digitization grant to digitize the negatives from the Louisiana State Penitentiary Museum. And we're bringing on a couple of graduate students to work on that, so that's pretty exciting. And we, even though the LSP Museum would keep like the physical versions, we get to have the digital copies. So we would be putting that on like the LDL and such, and of course it would be a part of our archives as well, or the Acadiana archives, I should say. I had a couple other projects that I wanted to do, but obviously got stalled with COVID. And one such that I am planning, I'm not going to go into details because I don't know how it's going to happen yet, but one thing that I wanted to do like for next year, it had to do with like a film screening. That's probably film screening for 2021. That may have to be pushed back, or that may have to be altered or changed. So thankfully that's a year out, so it'll give us a chance to revisit that or rethink it. Maybe instead of like a film screening, it would just be like a panel discussion or something. But like I said, that's a year's off. Besides that, for the most part, things have been going pretty much been as I can't think of the term I want to say, but things are mostly I think back to normal. Actually another thing that's really great is for the longest time there was only 4 of us staff in the archives because they were holding our 2 library specialist positions who are like archivist assistant. One is the assistant to my assistant, and the other is the assistant to our Louisiana room librarian / reference archivist. Those positions had been on hold for I think a good year and a half. And right when we reopened, we were finally able to fill those 2 positions. So thankfully we are a full staff again. And yeah, I mean, we're pretty much, I think we're pretty much on track right now to at least finishing off with a good, at least finishing off on a high note, but we'll see.
All right, well, thank you, Zach. We have a couple questions in the chat, and I'm going to say that like I didn't put most of them there. So if our panelists want to take a crack at it, and then I'm not going to be offended if anybody else wants to answer or chime in. So let's see. Blake asked, how do we deal with people who come in and say that wearing a mask is overkill? So if our panelists want to take a crack at that.
So for the Gain Center, they are told to email us first to make an appointment. So we can only have 10 people. We can only have 10 people in the center at a time. That's including the faculty, staff, and if I have GAs here, if I have a student work here, if Center for Louisiana Studies, GovDocs and CCM, Cajun Creole Music Collection have student workers here total. So we can only have 4 researchers at a time on our best day. Because I started sharing this information while we were still in a shelter in place. I started writing policies and making them available on the website while we were still in a shelter in place procedure, and making sure, and the first thing I did was right before we came back, I wrote a phased reopening plan for the Gain Center that aligns with the university and the library's phased reopening plan, which also based on what I think is safe for me as someone with a pre-existing condition, my staff member who has a pre-existing condition, and the other people in the center who also have pre-existing conditions. So because for us, all those things are put in place, we have not run into that issue of people not wanting to wear their masks. And also in the library, they're not allowed in the library without a mask. So I know they have a mask. But in case that had happened, I actually got a donation of like 89 masks, cloth reusable masks that were made through the Turban Project to give researchers if they needed a mask, if they came in and they didn't want to put on a mask. For the Gain Center, because we're so small, people are usually really accommodating. People usually are really willing to listen because we're a small place and it's kind of like a special kind of interest you have to want to come here. So it's not that big of a problem. I can't imagine what it would be like to be in like a public library or a busier university archive kind of situation where people are used to just being able to go in whenever. Like we were always pretty much appointment only. Like people treated us as appointment only. They wouldn't just show up to use the archives. They show up to talk to us, but not just to use the archive. And that was kind of the difference. Oh, and Scott, yes and no, I do have a list. I will share the next event. It hasn't, I haven't actually made the flyer for the October talk and memorial for Dr. Gaines in October. So I'm working on those.
I'll say I'm at the public library, and as far as I know, we haven't had any big issues with people with masks. But of course, we're in Orleans Parish, which has been very, vocal about mask wearing from the beginning. My branch is located across the street from City Hall, so it's very clear that you have to wear the mask. And for us, we're only doing 4 appointments a day, and staff have to go downstairs, meet the person, escort them to the archives. So they're not getting past the front door to get in the archives without a mask. And we haven't had any issues in the general library, because for us, at least, the option is they can ask the person to wait outside. And since we're doing curbside service anyway, they can just bring them their materials outside. So we haven't had a big issue with it. I'm not sure if it's going around other places, but our patrons are extremely happy to get in and see what they want to see. So they're probably going to do whatever we ask them to do. So.
Yeah, I would say so far for us, yeah, it hasn't been an issue either. I think in certain parts of the library, there have been like students who like they'll sit down, they come in with a mask, but then they'll sit down, they might take it off, whatever, and they have to be told not to. But as far as like the special collections area, yeah, we have not had an issue with people like complaining about wearing masks, whatever. But if they did, I mean, my personal opinion would be tough luck. You can't come in. I mean, we have like a sign like right out on the door, and one of the things it says is, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it basically says you need to wear a mask, like at all times. We will not allow, in this, at least in the reading room area, we will not allow people to not wear a mask. And I said we also require that they wear gloves as well. So I mean, if they don't like that, then I would just have to say like, then you can go somewhere else. I mean, obviously I would do it in a respectful, cordial way, but I'd say you can't be in here then.
I haven't run into that either. I haven't run into any issues either with masks. That's one of the good things about being by appointment only. You can lay that rule out really quick and fast online. And then also with meeting them on the main floor of the library, if they don't have a mask on, first of all, the library has a mask policy and the university has a mask policy for all public places. The only areas on campus you're not allowed to, you can have a mask off is if you are in an office and you've got your door closed and you're socially distant. But other than that, because even though my floor is closed, I still, whenever I leave my office, I put my mask on because it's public areas with my staff. But yeah, and I kind of would be into the mindset of Zach. I would just say tough luck. You're not seeing the materials, and they would probably be escorted from the library as well. We have run into issues with students in the library, kind of doing what Zach has said, and so myself and a couple other staff have taken it upon ourselves to do just walk the floors and just say, hey, mask, put your mask up. And it is a violation of the students' code
of conduct
and their honor conduct, which the university never really told us what we need to do to report students for that. But anyways, that's that.
So sorry,
Yeah,
I was just gonna
no, go ahead.
the code of conduct. So at UL, what I was told, and I don't know, Zach, if you were told this, what I was told we would have to do is like you have, it's actually kind of a confrontational exchange to report them. You have to get their name and UL ID number and fill out a paper, some kind of form. And it's like, given the climate, it is not something I personally am going to engage with. I'm not doing it. Like, I have enough stress in my life. I'm not going to go up to these kids and they want to go out and start getting attitude with me because they don't want to wear masks. But now that we've moved into phase 3 as a state, I have started seeing more on the 3rd floor, them not wearing their masks. Usually I would just see it when they were, they're kind of holding the mask like this as they're getting off the elevator and they're going to put it back on, or they just pulled it off as they're about to get on the elevator. Now I've been seeing them at tables completely maskless. Not even, the mask isn't even on the table, and I'm just like, I can't with you. I can't deal with you right now. I know that no one said it was okay to take your mask off. I know you know that.
And it's also really difficult to police it as well.
It
I think
is.
we were even told like we should. I mean, we've also some have been told that you shouldn't police either. But yeah, I mean it's hard to.
Today's the only day I think I haven't heard them over the loudspeaker reminding them to put their masks on.
Oh yeah, they stopped it. Yeah, they used to do that. Like they would do that like several times a day. They haven't been doing that now. So I don't know.
And our little patrols have helped because we have, as a staff, we've noticed, and I think the students realize that we're watching and we're looking. And so now they've actually, and the library, our library is 10 stories. And so we have closed all of the upper floors. And so we only have two floors that are open for students for study. So it's a little bit more restrictive in space for us to look at and patrol, and we have a little bit more control over that.
Okay, so there's been a couple Couple more questions. I think there's been a few answers in the chat, but I'm just going to put it out there because it is a very interesting question in my opinion. Michelle is asking, how are we citing Zoom meetings using Chicago or however the heck you're supposed to say that?
Arabian.
Yeah, thank you. How are we citing Zoom meetings?
However y'all say, I'm terrible at citation.
In the chat, I said that I would cite it whatever the Zoom meeting was. So if it was like a lecture or a webinar or a conference session, such as this one, I would cite it as such because I think there are existing rules for those. But if it was just like a colleague Zoom meeting, I wouldn't know how to cite that actually. So if anyone has any suggestions, drop that in the chat. Marilyn has also asked if anyone has gone out to a potential donor house call, either since COVID, or if they've done it before, or have they been doing it lately?
Me, sort of. I mean, when I got the Town of Washington records, that was at the mayor's office. But otherwise, like personal houses, no. Like for that, we asked that we have a loading dock, so we asked that they would come by and drop it off there. So whenever we've had other collections, be it additions, or when we've gotten them, we told them to come by there.
I can tell you I went out to City Hall to look at some things. I was a little bit nervous, but everybody had their masks on. And it probably in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go out to a house that has some things that I'm just going to risk it and go see. I'm scared, but we're scared.
Yeah.
I'm not in that vulnerable population. We're doing a lot of things in the library, but I mean, we've been open since many things were not open, and we require people to wear masks. I see our reference faculty really close to patrons trying to help them, and I mean, I notice it, but I don't really know what else to do at this point. And remember, I said earlier, I sent my college freshman down to Nichols, and I hope y'all are taking care of her down there. But, it's just scary.
Your reference staff, Cindy, are they wearing face shields and stuff?
They can wear face shields. Most of them wear masks.
Okay.
They built shields at the circulation desk. They built shields at the reference desk, but our reference staff get up and go help patrons on the computer, and public is really, it's different. But I mean, we have patrons that come in that need help to get their SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
That's the only way you can apply for some jobs. We have parents that look like they're homeschooling or are working on virtual school projects. And it's just a really different, I don't know, service attitude, clientele, all rolled into one, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I am in awe of our reference staff and what they do.
I haven't gone to a donor, but we had a really big project that we had already planned and lined people up for, that we were recording them, and then COVID happened. So we did do the project, and it was, we managed. We managed because this year is the 10th anniversary of the Game Center being officially open. So I had a whole year of programming, scheduled that has all been has been scrapped and thrown to the wind. So I had to get something out. We had to get something out, but it was one person in the center at a time. Only time they didn't have on a mask is when they were reading, because they were reading. So it's really important to be able to see. We transcribed it as well, but also when they're reading and the camera's one place, we're spread out. We went to Dr. Daryl Bork's house to record him there. And the same, he didn't have on a mask, we had on masks, we had the distance. We just we didn't have a choice. I had so many plans for this year, and it's working. I'm not gonna complain too much. At the end of the day, it's all coming together somehow. It'll come out in the wash. That's just what I'm gonna keep saying to myself. It'll come out in the wash.
Yeah, let's all keep telling ourselves that.
I haven't gone out to any donors yet. We primarily go to City Hall, but we were working on multiple projects at City Hall, in City Hall offices, and I had multiple projects set up to have things brought over from City Hall, and it all kind of stopped. And I'm starting to put out feelers because it's making me very nervous that if I don't keep on them about it, that it's just going to go away and they're going to forget. So at some point, we're going to have to do it and try to just be as safe as possible, because otherwise I feel like we're not going to get the materials that were supposed to come to us, because it's going to go to the back of their mind and they're going to do other things, and they're moving a bunch of offices. So if, you know, we don't take advantage, at some point we're going to lose the stuff. But it's kind of been sitting there in, you know, boxes in their storeroom with our space sitting open waiting for it. So it's going to be interesting the first time we do it.
I think that's been the hardest part. Like, I'm so public program focused because my board is like, the game center needs to be more known. And it's like, okay. But not being, like, having to understand how to plan, and when you're doing public programs, and even when you're thinking about collection development and accessioning materials, you kind of have to strike when the iron is hot. If you take too much time, they forget. They forget that you agreed. I'm pretty sure I lost a collection. I lost contact with the potential donor from 2015 because we just could never align. And COVID has really put a hamper on that, because one of the things personally I'm really good at is being like, walking into people's offices being like, hi, how are you? Can we chat? And then I usually get the things I want. I can't do that over an email. It's not as effective. But that's been the hardest thing, because you cannot, I'm only willing to put myself at so much risk. I have elderly parents. I have my father had a heart attack in 2013, unknowingly, had to have a double bypass. You know, my husband his family has a lot of diabetes. My family has a lot of diabetes. I have asthma. You know, I have friends with teeny babies right now, and I would love to see them. Like, I have to think about all those things, and it is not fair to ask someone else to put themselves in risk if I'm not willing to do it. So figuring out, like, that's been the hardest thing. That's been the biggest change, is figuring out how to still function like everything is normal and be safe and not, like, lose my mind at times.
And I think that is the one thing that is the only positive out of all of this, and I'm not going to say it's distributed evenly, but literally all of us are having the same problem. Everybody has to deal with this like it's a problem. And Christina, I'm not going to say that we have anything comparable to what y'all are going through in New Orleans, because we just don't. But we do all have the same issue of, we need to be safe, we need to be distant, we need to find ways around this. And I think that is the one thing that's helped everyone, in terms of, like, we don't have to explain to patrons who might have an issue why we can't do something, is because they know already. They know we can't do this. But okay, I'm going to cut that off there. That was an excellent session. Thank you, everyone who participated. If you want to come, we have the business meeting is in 15 minutes. And then if you don't want to pay attention to the business meeting, then you can come to the happy hour. That's going to be from 3:30 to 4:30. And there might be some discussion, because I had a couple questions about having COVID collections or having 2020 collections, and I'd love to talk about that there. But otherwise, thanks for showing up, people, and I'll see you maybe in 15 minutes, maybe in an hour.